Well, let's get right to it. Some of you have been waiting all afternoon for this, and some of you are going to be sorry that you made me so mad. I don't get mad very often. That's true. I'm the most happy-go-lucky person I've ever met, and I find it hard to believe when people who portray themselves as your friends just ultimately stab you in the back. But you know, that's just who they are. They're not friends, they're scum. But anyway, we're gonna get right to it. So here's what's been going around for the last year. I'm gonna tell you the rumors and why I'm making this video, and then I'm gonna tell you the story of what actually happened. So the rumor going around is that I plotted with a dealer to sue a manufacturer, and that I funded her attorney, and that we were going to split the proceeds of what she got from them. So some of you, I already know you've heard that story because you wouldn't believe how many people have reached out to me today. That is a bunch of bullshit. None of that happened. None of that happened. But I'm going to ask you to stick with me and think about what you would have done in the situation that I was put in, and in the situation that the dealer was put in. There's a dealer by the name of Mariah. She was fairly new to Burnett Affordable Buildings. She was kicking ass and taking numbers. She was doing a really good job with sales. And, you know, I took over from a sales manager named Skeet Forrester, who was absolutely worthless. And I mean, he was worthless. So, I mean, I could see why, it was pretty clear why their company was struggling, but that's beside the point. So Mariah's been there a month or two, and she goes to Skeet, who, remember, was her supervisor and sales manager, and tells him that their repairman was making sexually advances towards her and being sexually harassing to her when he was at her lot repairing buildings. She wasn't trying to get him fired. She wasn't trying to get him in trouble. She simply did not want him to come to her lot again. And Skeet's response was to say, well, perhaps you should wear more conservative clothing. You know, if you just dress differently. That's not good. Okay, let's go back a minute. She didn't want to get him fired. She didn't want to get him in trouble. If it had been me, I would have wanted him fired. But that's beside the point. She has her own different history. She simply wanted the sexual harassment to stop. Skeet continued to send that repairman to her lot, who continued to sexually harass her. So then we jump forward to a year ago, April, and at some point in April, she just quit putting in repair requests, even though repairs needed to be done, because clearly Skeet wasn't going to do anything about it. Skeet never told Atlee, who runs Burnett Affordable Buildings, about what Mariah had told him until sometime in late May, a year ago, late May. Okay? I'm not even anywhere involved in the situation yet, so obviously, clearly, I knew none of what was going on. But I flew out and met with Atlee to talk to him about helping them turn their company around. And I was at the airport getting ready to fly home, and he called me and he says, we have a really big problem. We have a dealer who is making false allegations against one of our guys, and we need you to fire her. And I was blown away, like, my God, I'm not even boots on the ground yet. What is happening here? But in any event, I'm like, how do you know they're false allegations? Now you go back a minute. I used to be a family law guardian ad litem in Washington State. The truth is very important to me. There aren't always three sides to the story. And what my response to him was, is tell me what happened. And what Atlee said is that she was making false allegations, and that I needed to fire her. And I suggested that it might be prudent that we do an investigation and find out what actually had occurred to the best of our ability, and that I did assure him that if she had made false allegations, she'd be gone faster than she knew what hit her. Like, that's not going to be tolerated. And remember, giving Atlee the benefit of the doubt, Skeet had failed to do his job. Now, later found out Skeet's been friends with the repairman since apparently the repairman was really young. Okay. So, you know, he didn't do his job. By the way, out there listening, if you supervise someone and someone comes to you and they report any type of harassment, you have a legal obligation to investigate and find the truth to the best of your ability. Skeet, boy, God. Anyway, so we jump forward. I'm on the road to Arkansas in my truck when we were moving there, and I get a call from Michael Garcia, who is no longer with Burnett. But at that point, he had a lot, and Michael said, hey, I've got to talk to you about this. I have a situation that arose, and I'm really concerned. I'm, you know, a single parent and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what's happening? And he said, well, Jim from C&H Metal Buildings just came into my lot unexpectedly, and he was telling me how we need to be very careful and stay away from Mariah because Mariah makes false allegations. And I was like, oh my gosh, no investigation was even done. Give me a little time. I'll get to the bottom of this. I understand your concern. Okay, so I'm making a point here because Atlee made a point to contact people from all sorts of companies and all their drivers, haulers, and a bunch of their dealers, and warn them that to be very cautious around Mariah because she made false allegations. Now, this is the man that never had even called Mariah about it and hadn't even known about the allegations for months. But the assumption was that she was lying immediately right off the bat. Now, I never set out to prove that she was telling the truth. I don't care who was telling the truth. I was going to find the truth. So it was very concerning to me that a representative from a company that had displays on a bunch of their dealers' lots was coming in and saying these things about another dealer. And I called Atlee and I was like, why on earth, what is going on? Why is Jim going into our dealers? And Atlee's like, well, I called them and told them all about it so they could protect themselves. And I'm like, okay, but you've never talked to her. You've never talked to Jay McGraw. I should have printed up his rap sheet. I know what it says though. You've never done any investigation. You're just assuming she's lying. Like, this is so not okay. We could be here for hours, but I'm going to hit the really important parts. Mariah's story has never changed. Mariah reported to her superior that worked for Burnett Affordable Buildings that she was being sexually harassed, and Skeet swept it under the rug because he was friends with Ray. He didn't report it to Atlee for several months, and then Atlee did absolutely no investigation. So we get there, all this is going on. You know, I'm working 70 or 80 hours a week trying to get their dealers selling more buildings and still trying to investigate this. And it came to my attention from two other dealers that I had lunch with that Ray is a level 3 for life registered sex offender in Oklahoma who had been in prison for 4.5 years for raping his 13-year-old stepdaughter. I brought this to Atlee's attention and he was absolutely shocked. I have no doubt that I do not believe for a minute that Atlee knew that Ray was a registered sex offender. I do not believe that. But I know for a fact Aaron Burnett knew he was because I sat with Aaron and Atlee sometime in early September or August, and Aaron, we were talking about all this, and Atlee brought it up. He's like, I didn't know. And Aaron's like, oh, I've known. I'm friends with his parents, and, he pled guilty, and on and on and on. The shed haulers, with the exception of one who will remain unnamed and is a fantastic human being, the rest of them were absolutely horrible to Mariah. every time they came to their lot. Now remember, they'd been warned that she makes false allegations, right? They have no reason to believe that Atlee wouldn't be telling them the truth, because no one in their right mind would make an allegation like that without investigating it, right? Now, no investigation was done. Nobody had to even talk to Ray. Nobody had even talked to Mariah, except for me. They were all treating her horribly because they were terrified of her. And I could see what was happening. Atlee was shocked when he found out that they were sending a level 3 registered sex offender who isn't supposed to be within 1,000 feet of children for the rest of his life to customers' homes and dealers' lots. It was well known within their company that Ray was a sex offender. Atlee still did not believe that Mariah was telling the truth. And finally talked to Ray, who of course denied it. Of course he denied it. Come on. But he never reached out to Mariah until I insisted on it. And I met with him and Mariah. And Mariah explained what happened again. Her story has never changed. There's never been any reason to believe that she wasn't telling the truth, but I still didn't have enough information. Atlee and I then met with Ray, and of course Ray denied it. But he also fully admitted that he was guilty. He pled guilty. He wasn't proud of his past. And the reason we met with him was because Mariah, on her own, had hired who I believe to be the #1 polygrapher in the state of Oklahoma, and had passed a double polygraph with absolutely no deception. Now, you could say, oh, I know some of you are thinking this. Polygraphs aren't used in court. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I can assure you, if there's a police investigation and you pass a polygraph, it's pretty much investigation over. They know you're telling the truth. The problem with polygraphs is oftentimes they're inconclusive, and so they can't tell either way. She passed with absolutely no deception. And if you look it up, a double polygraph is almost impossible to pass without, if you're actually lying. Ray was asked to take a polygraph, and he refused. Now, being a level 3 registered sex offender, what he told me and Atlee was he had taken 7 polygraphs in the past. He knew exactly how they worked. He knew exactly how they worked. He knew the gig was up. After Mariah passed the polygraph, Atlee made the decision that they didn't want to fire Ray. They would just move him to work in the plant. And I absolutely said, you are out of your mind. What message are you giving to everyone? When Ray quit, Atlee called me. I know exactly where I was on the road. I know the time of day it was at, and I know what the weather was like that day. And he said, you've got to help. I believe Mariah is telling the truth. I have to make this okay. What we did was horrible by slandering her name to not only a bunch of our dealers, but all of our haulers and people outside the company. We've got to make it right. I was on that 3-way call when he was begging Mariah for forgiveness. And I have to tell you, I have the utmost respect for that woman. She was completely respectful to him. But she did let him know that she would no longer represent their company, and that Atlee really had no idea of the damage that they had caused to her. So why are we here, folks? I asked Atlee before we did that 3-way call, how is it that all of a sudden you believe she's telling the truth? You didn't even believe it when she passed a double polygraph. And he said to me, because Ray quit, and he wouldn't have quit if he wasn't guilty. Okay, Atlee, I'm talking directly to you right now. If you are so naive to not look at the evidence and the facts man, I hope nothing like this happens to any of your girls or your wife. Seriously. Seriously. And Erin Burnett, you were sending a level 3 registered sex offender that you admit you knew was guilty, who had raped his 13-year-old stepdaughter over and over and over to customers' homes. What were you thinking? You know what, folks? Allie told me they believed her, Mariah, and they still wanted me to fire her. Did you hear what I said? They still wanted me to fire her. What I suggested is that they ought to write her a very big check, because they literally slandered her name, destroyed her reputation, and took away her ability to earn a really good income because she could no longer represent a company that had treated her that way. I have not slandered their name. I have not gone out and told people the whole story because I haven't wanted to get people involved. But they've gone around telling people that Mariah and I plotted together, and that I paid for her attorney, and that we had a deal that we were going to split the proceeds. Their attorney sent Mariah a letter, and I've got it in my office. They offered her $500 for her inconvenience if she'd agree to sign an NDA. Did you hear what I said? $500. That's a slap in the face. What they did to her is unconscionable. I don't care what church they go to or what Bible they read, but I can guarantee you that God would not be happy about the way they treated her and the way they continue to treat me and her. I didn't go out and tell anybody the story other than people super close to me. But they felt the need to go out and make me look bad so that they could be okay justifying their inaction. It is against the law in Oklahoma to not investigate. And I'll tell you, Liz, still here, if it was me instead of her, I'd own that fucking company. I'd own it. And I'd shut it down. It is not okay to allow someone to sexually harass someone. It is not okay. Oh, and they didn't fire Skeet even when they knew the truth. They had turned him into a dealer once I replaced him. Of course, that didn't last long because he's worthless. They still wanted me to fire her. I could have gone out and blasted this all over and made them look horrible. I didn't make them look horrible. Their action and inaction made them look horrible. And I said hardly a word to anyone. And it's still coming around to me how I am a horrible person. And I would be a horrible person if it had happened. If I had plotted with her and paid for her attorney and we had come to an agreement that we were going to split the profits, what in the hell? Who even came up with that? Like, you have way more time on your hands than I do, because I don't sit around plotting or making up crap or exaggerating about anyone. This situation is what it is. It's horrible. I was on that call when Allie begged her for forgiveness. And during that call, I suggested that he needed to have an all-team call, an all-hauler call for Burnett Affordable Buildings, and tell them exactly what he was apologizing to her for. And he refused to do it because they were afraid of getting sued. Go figure. Go figure. Yeah. I'll never put my integrity aside for any amount of money. I don't care what it is. One of their dealers that had, not their dealers, one of their haulers that had really, really treated Mariah poorly, his name was Cody. I don't believe I ever met him. I may have, but I don't remember. I was there for such a short period of time. But Cody came into her lot after this all transpired. And it was clear that Atlee had contacted the haulers and said, we made a horrible mistake. Cody apologized to Mariah, and I give him kudos for that. And I give Atlee kudos. But Erin Burnett, why don't you get off your butt and make an apology for what you allowed to happen? And I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a geek in this industry. If you don't have something nice to say about me, you keep my goddamn name out of your mouth. I have the purest intentions in my life. But slimy people think that everybody is slimy, and that's not true. I'm not going to sit by. And I'll tell you what, if I had extra money right now, I'd get her the highest paid attorney in this country that I could. Never did Mariah and I discuss anything like that. It's not who I am. This is her battle to fight, but I can assure you, it's on now. So if you've stuck around for this 21 and 30 minutes, now you know the truth. There's several of you that owe me an apology, and you owe me a public apology. And before this is over, I'm going to get that public apology. It's not okay. Some of you I considered very good friends. And the things you said and wrote about me are absolutely unacceptable. That I'm a disgusting human being because I plotted with Mariah. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. I didn't plot with anybody. And I'm going to ask, if it was your wife or your daughter, wouldn't you have wanted to find the truth? My God, this isn't rocket science. I didn't ask to be pulled in this. And there are some people that are so into living underneath a rock, and Atlee being one of them. I don't think Atlee can even imagine, couldn't even imagine that things like this happen. And I get that, but get out from underneath that rock. This is real life. I'll go back and say it again. If it had happened to me, I'd own this company, own that company. What they did was unacceptable. And if you don't like what I say, I really don't care. Go away. Because you're no friend of mine anyway.